Hi, this is Ridea Keeping It Real, and we are going to be reading from the Good News Bible, and we're going to read the book of Daniel, chapter 1 and 2. It is Saturday, June the 29th, and I've determined that this is the best way for me to get through the Old Testament, the Apocrypha, and the New Testament the rest of the year, is to do it this way on the Sabbath, which I think is the Sabbath. Things are telling me that probably the Sabbath is really Thursday to Friday, but I'm still researching that. So I'm still using Saturday for now until I can determine what the real Sabbath is. So this is the best way for me to get through it, is just to pretend like someone is, I'm reading to someone, or I have to read it to understand it versus just getting through it. So here we are. The book of Daniel says, the introduction. The book of Daniel was written during the time when the Jews were suffering greatly under the persecution and oppression of a pagan king. Using stories and accounts of visions, the writer encourages the people of his time with the hope that God will bring the tyrant down and restore sovereignty to God's people. You hear where it says the writer encourages the people of his time, because there is question about who wrote the book of Daniel. Um, this is this right here is from Haley's Bible Handbook. It's something that my brother had, and he gave it to me so many years ago, so it's worn and tattered at this point. But it says here, it's reading, kind of going through what it was saying about the book of Daniel, is that the book of Daniel, the book itself represents Daniel as its author, and it gives you the verses. Its genuineness was sanctioned by Christ. It gives you the verse in the New Testament. It was so accepted by Jews and early Christians, so it could be accepted by Jews and early Christians, whatever that name is. I don't pretend to try to even make them out. An infidel of the 3rd century AD propounded the theory that the book was a forgery of the period of the Maccabean revolt, the 4-year revolt, the Maccabean revolt, that's in the Apocrypha. However, the traditional view that the book is a true historical document dating from the days of Daniel himself persisted unanimously amongst Christians and Jewish scholars till the rise of the modern criticism. And now the critics, in the name of modern scholarship, have revived the theory, this theory that it's a forgery, and put it forth as a settled fact that the book was written by an unknown author who was living 400 years after the days of Daniel, assumed Daniel's name, and palmed off on his own generation his own spurious work as the genuine work of a hero long dead. If that God could be a party to the deception. Now, if that God could be a party to, wait a minute, if the book is not exactly what it professes to be, how can we think that God could be a party to the deception? For writers to put forth their own ideas in the names of heroes who lived long before is not even common honesty. We suspect that the real crux of the attempt to discredit the book of Daniel is the unwillingness of intellectual pride to accept the marvelous miracles and amazing prophecies recorded in the book. So that could be one of the reasons why this book says the writer instead of Daniel, right? Okay. So the book has two main parts. The two main parts. One, stories about Daniel and some of his fellow exiles who, through their faith in God and obedience to him, triumph over their enemies. We need to know how to do that. These stories are set in the time of the Babylonian and Persian empires. A series of visions seen by Daniel, and many of us are having visions and dreams. So, that's one of the important reasons to read books like this, so that you're not going crazy, right? It's real. It happens. We have these visions and dreams that come directly from the Most High, which in the form of symbols present the successive rise and fall of several empires, beginning with Babylonia, and predict the downfall of the pagan oppressor and the victory of God's people. So here's the outline of the content, and here is, let's see if I can, it's chapter 1, the story of Daniel and his friends, the young man at Nebuchadnezzar's court. In the 3rd year that Jehoiakim was the king of Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylonia attacked Jerusalem and surrounded the city. The Lord had let him capture King Jehoiakim and seize some of the temple's treasures. He took some prisoners back with him to the temple of his gods in Babylon, and put the captured treasures in the temple storeroom. So what happened? So King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylonia, he attacked Jerusalem. He surrounded the city. He captured the king, seized the temple treasures, and took some prisoners back with him. Okay. The king ordered Ashpenaz, his chief official, to select from among the Israelite exiles some young men of the royal family and of the noble families. They had to be handsome, intelligent, and well-trained, quick to learn, and free from physical defects, so that they would be qualified to serve in the royal court. Ashpenaz was to teach them to read and write the Babylonian language. The king also gave orders that every day they were to be given the same food and wine as the members of the royal court. After 3 years of this training, they were to appear before the king. 3 years is a long time. I didn't know it was 3 years. What little pen is one? 3 years. They were to appear before the king. Among the chosen was Daniel, Hannah, Mishael, and Azariah, all of whom were from the tribe of Judah. The chief official gave them new names: Belshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I didn't know Daniel's name had been changed too, because you always hear just Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel made up his mind not to let himself become ritually unclean by eating the food and drinking the wine of the royal court. So he asked Ashpenaz to help him, and God made Ashpenaz synthetic. See, God can do it. God made Ashpenaz sympathetic to Daniel. Ashpenaz, however, was afraid. He was afraid of the king. So he said to Daniel, "The king has decided that you are to eat and drink, and if you don't look as fit as the other young men, he may kill me." So Daniel went to the guard, whom Ashpenaz had placed in charge of him and his 3 friends. "Test us for 10 days, he said. That's why the 3 years didn't make sense to me, because I knew it was a short period of time. So test us for 10 days, he said. Give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. And have you ever heard of Daniel's diet? This is what they're talking about. Then compare us with the young men who are eating the food of the royal court, and base your decision on how we look." He agreed to let them try it for 10 days. When the time was up, they looked healthier and stronger than all of those who had been eating the royal food. So from then on, the guard let them continue to eat the vegetables instead of what the king provided. God gave the 4 men knowledge. God gave the 4 men knowledge and skill in literature and philosophy. God did it. Again, God did it. God can do it. In addition, he gave Daniel skill in interpreting visions and dreams. At the end of the 3 years set by the king, Ashpenaz took all of the young men to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked to them all, and Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, I don't know. Hey, you guys can see the words. Make them out yourself. Impressed him more than any of the others. So they became members of the king's court. No matter what question the king asked or what problem he raised, these four knew 10 times more than the fortune teller and the magicians in his whole kingdom. Daniel remained at the royal court until Cyrus, the emperor of Persia, conquered Babylonia. Okay, so the whole time Daniel was amongst the royal court that he was captured. Chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar's Dream. In the second year, let me see what this handbook says about chapter 1. Hold on. So chapter 1, the man Daniel. Daniel was the first group of captives from Jerusalem to Babylon in 606 BC. He was a royal and noble blood. Josephus says that Daniel and his three friends were kin to King Zedekiah. That gave them easier entree to the palace of Babylon. Handsome, brilliant young men who were under the special care of God and trained of him to bear witness to his name in the heathen court that then ruled the world. The king's dainties, which they refused to eat, probably were foods that had been offered in sacrifice to Babylonian idols. Daniel's meteoric rise to worldwide fame is indicated in Ezekiel 14, 20, 28:3, written only 15 years later, while Daniel was still a very young man. What a remarkable man. Absolutely answering in his own religious convictions, yet so loyal to his idolatrous king that he was trusted with the affairs of the empire. That is kind of deep. Okay. The dream. Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar's dream. In the second year that Nebuchadnezzar was king, he had a dream. It worried him so much that he couldn't sleep. So he sent for his fortune tellers, magicians, sorcerers, and wizards to come and explain the dream to him. When they came and stood before the king, he said to them, I'm worried about the dream I've had. I want to know what it means. They answered the king in Aramaic, May your majesty live forever. Tell us your dream and we will explain it to you. The king said to them, I have made up my mind that you must tell me the dream and then tell me what it means. If you can't, I'll have you torn limb from limb and make your houses a pile of ruins. But if you can tell me both the dream and its meaning, I will reward you with gifts and great honor. Now then, tell me what the dream was and what it means. They answered the king again, If your majesty will only tell us what the dream was, we will explain it. At that the king exclaimed, Just as I thought, you are trying to gain time because you see that I have made up my mind to give all of you the same punishment. If you don't tell me the dream. You have agreed amongst yourselves to go on and telling me lies because you hope that in time things will change. Tell me what the dream was and then tell me what tell me what the dream was, and then I will know that you also tell me what it means. Okay. The advisors replied, There is no one on the face of the earth who can tell your majesty what you want to know. No king, not even the greatest and most powerful, has ever made such a demand. And his fortune tellers, magicians, and wizards. For his fortune tellers, magicians, and wizards. What your majesty is asking for is so difficult that no one can do it for you except the gods. The gods is in lowercase. And they do not live amongst human beings. And the king flew into a rage and ordered the execution of all of the royal advisors in Babylon. So the order was issued for all of them to be killed, including Daniel and his friends. Color these pictures later. Oh, this is the dream. This is pictures of the dream here. Okay. God shows Daniel what the dream means. Then Daniel went to Arioch, commander of the king's bodyguard, who had been ordered to carry out the execution. Choosing his words carefully, he asked Arioch why the king had issued such a harsh order. So Arioch told Daniel what had happened. Daniel went at once and obtained royal permission for more time, so that he could tell the king what the dream meant. Then Daniel went home and told his friends what had happened. He told them to pray to God of heaven for mercy and to ask him to explain the mystery to them so that they would not be killed along with the other advisors of Babylon. So he went to God. He asked his friends to go to pray to God of heaven for mercy and to ask him to explain the mystery to them. Ask and you shall receive. Then, the same night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision, and he praised the God of heaven. This is his praise to the God of heaven. God is wise and powerful. Praise him forever and ever. He controls the times and the seasons. He makes and unmakes kings. It is he who gives wisdom and understanding. He reveals things that are deep and secret. He knows what is hidden in the darkness, and he himself is surrounded by light. I praise you and I honor you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and strength. You have answered my prayer and shown us what to tell the king. Daniel tells the king the dream and explains it. So Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had commanded to execute the royal advisors. He said to him, "Don't put them to death. Take me to the king, and I will tell him what his dream means." At once, Arioch took Daniel into King Nebuchadnezzar's presence, and the king and King Nebuchadnezzar's presence and told the king, "I have found one of the Jewish exiles who can tell your majesty the meaning of your dream." The king said to Daniel, who was also called Belteshazzar, "Can you tell me what I dreamed and what it means?" Daniel replied, "Your majesty, there is no wizard, magician, fortune teller, or astrologer who can tell you that. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has informed your majesty what will happen in the future. Now I will tell you the dream, the vision you had while you were asleep. While your majesty was sleeping, you dreamed about the future, and God who reveals mysteries showed you what is going to happen. Now this mystery was revealed to me, not because I'm wiser than anyone else, but so that your majesty may learn the meaning of your dream and understand the thoughts that come to you. Your majesty, in your vision, you saw standing before you a giant statue, bright and shining, terrifying to look at. Its head was made of the finest gold, its chest and arms were made of silver, its waist and hips of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet partly of iron, partly of clay. While you were looking at it, a great stone broke loose from a cliff without anyone touching it, struck the iron and clay feet of the statue and shattered them. At once the iron, clay, bronze, silver, and gold crumbled and became like the dust on the threshing place in summer. The wind carried it all away, leaving not a trace, but the stone grew to be a mountain that covered the whole earth. This was the dream. Now I will tell your majesty what it means. Just imagine what that must have felt like for the king to hear Daniel tell him about his dream. Your majesty, what it means. Now, that was your dream. Now I will tell your majesty what it means. Your majesty, you are the greatest of all kings. The God of heaven has made you emperor and given you power, might, honor. He has made you ruler of all of the inhabited earth, and ruler over all the animals and birds. Wow. You are the head of gold. After you, there will be another empire, not as great as yours, and after that a third, an empire of bronze, which will rule the whole earth. And then there will be a fourth empire, as strong as iron, which shatters and breaks everything. And just as iron shatters everything, it will shatter and crush all the earlier empires. So one empire rises and falls, another rises and falls. You also saw that the feet and the toes were partly clay and partly iron. This means that it will be a divided empire. It will have something of the strength of iron, but there was iron mixed with clay. The toes partly iron and partly clay means that part of the empire will be strong and part of it will be weak. You also saw that the iron was mixed with clay. This means that the rulers of that empire will try to unite their families by intermarriage, but they will not be able to, any more than iron can mix with clay. At the time of those rulers, the God of heaven will establish a kingdom that will never end. It will never be conquered, but will completely destroy all of those empires and then last forever. I mean, so you read that, that's a, a dream of a king long ago, a vision that God gave to him of the future, which we're in right now. That's what this is. I mean, so you don't have to read any other books or secret books or anything else. You can just read that and know what's coming. That know all of these empires that are here and countries that think they're in charge and presidents and kings and queens that think they're in charge. Maybe for a moment, but not in the end. Right? That's what this is telling us. Okay. And God of heaven will establish a kingdom that will never end. It will never be conquered, but will completely destroy all those empires and then last forever. You saw how a stone broke loose from a cliff without anyone touching it, and how it struck the statue made of iron, bronze, clay, silver, and gold. The great God, is telling your majesty what will happen in the future. I have told you exactly what you dream and have given you the true meaning. Whew. I'm sure King Nebuchadnezzar is blown away. The king rewards Daniel. Then King Nebuchadnezzar bowed to the ground. Wow. Whew. And gave orders for sacrifices and offerings to be made to Daniel. The king said, "Your God is the greatest of all gods, the Lord over kings, and the one who reveals mysteries. I know this because you have been able to explain this mystery." Then he gave Daniel a high position, presented him with many splendid gifts, put him in charge of the province of Babylon, and made him the head of all the royal advisors. At Daniel's request, the king put Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in charge of the affairs of the province of Babylon. Daniel, however, remained at the royal court. Whew, okay, hold on. 1 and 2, this is the dream. Highlights of the dream. Is that Daniel talking to Oh, that's the king. Chapter 2, verse 3. Okay. So this is the king saying, "Can you tell us your dreams?" They're like, "We can't tell you the dreams. Nobody can do that." He's like, "Well, if nobody can do that, what do you say? If y'all can't do that, I'm gonna go ahead and everybody's gonna be dead and kill everybody." Then verse 17. Oh, Daniel goes to his friends and says, "Everybody pray. I need to figure out what happened so we don't die." Daniel has a dream, understands what to do, goes to the king, talks to the king. Verse 31. Oh, and Daniel's explaining the statue, the rock that hits the feet. The statue crumbles. The rock grows. Oh, the rock, think about that. The rock is, the kingdom of the Most High that grows and grows and grows and everlasting. The king is like, "Wow, great, man. That was cool. I know you are the truth. I'm bowed down to you. Everybody, bow down, bow down." I love it. I love it. So that was Daniel chapter 1 and chapter 2. Yeah, I'm going to color a couple of the pictures just because I want to. Because sometimes, you're reading this. Like if I was just reading this and I wasn't recording right now, I wouldn't have probably. I would have read the words, but not really paid attention to what I was reading. I try to make sense of what I was reading. Right? I don't know. Sometimes we just got to figure out what works for us. That's a sheet of paper. Looks like a sheet of paper. You got to think. I mean, I sometimes just put myself like, this is real. This really happened. Just like you're living your life today. It's like, whatever you're doing, what I'm doing, we're really doing it. This really happened where there was a king. This man came to him and told him his dream and told him what it meant. And what it meant was crazy important. I mean, so just imagine what that must feel like. I always colored them brown. I always color everybody's face brown because that's what I want to believe it is. And this little book allows me to do that. So it's a beard. You're like, "Yo, we can't do this. He's asking us to do something crazy, man." I mean, but just reading that one verse tells you we are in a place where we know that kingdoms and empires come and they go. So we have to know that, like what we see with the US and with all these countries, it's not going to last forever. They're not going to be superpowers forever. They know that too. So, anyways, I'm going to finish coloring this. And then come back and I'll read chapters 3, 4. How many chapters are there in Daniel? There's 8. No. I've already read some of this. I guess I had to read it for something else where I was studying it. There is 12 chapters of Daniel. So I'll come back and read a couple more chapters. But let me see what the Bible handbook says about chapter 2. And then we'll close out. So the dream image. This was the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign as sole ruler. What does that mean? Sole ruler. Daniel was still a mere lad, having been in Babylon only 3 years. The four world empires here predicted are generally understood to have been Babylonian, Persian, Greek, and Roman, from the days of Daniel to the coming of Christ. The world was ruled by these four empires, exactly as Daniel had predicted. In the days of the Roman Empire, Christ appeared and set up a kingdom which, starting as a grain of mustard seed and passing through many vicissitudes, is now giving every evidence that it will become a universal and everlasting kingdom. I don't know about that. I mean, that universal word is universal and everlasting kingdom, blossoming into the full glory of the Lord's return. I mean, this is really Christian-y. Yeah. Critics who assign a Maccabean date to the book of Daniel in order to explain it as referring to past events instead of being predicted of the future find it necessary to place all the four empires prior to the date of the composition in the so-called the Persian Empire, the two empires, Median and Persian, in order to make the Greek Empire the fourth. But as a matter of fact, there was no Median Empire or Persian Empire following the fall of Babylon. To make it appear so is only an effort to distort the facts of history. So, I mean, this at least tells you what people are trying to do to lie, right? So that it could be, it could not be true. Okay. To make it appear so that it's only an effort to distort the facts of history, to substantiate a theory. And it also lets you know that people have been lying about history all along when they don't like what's written. Medes and Persians constitute one empire under the rule of the Persian kings. Darius the Mede was only a sub-king, ruling for a little while under Cyrus the Persian, and Cyrus arrived. Till Cyrus arrived. Moreover, nothing happened in the Maccabean period that answers to the stone cut out of the mountain. This prophecy of the four kingdoms is further explained in chapter 7, the four beasts, chapter 8, the ram and the he-goat, chapter 9, the 70 weeks, chapter 11, the struggles between the kings of the north and the kings of the south. Okay. That kind of gave me a different perspective on it, but so, that's Daniel chapter 1 and chapter 2, and we'll come back and we'll do a couple more chapters of Daniel until we finish it up. Well, thanks a lot, and until next time, it's Ridea keeping it real.